90% of Bitcoiners are measuring it from a fiat instrument. What does that mean? They're giving more strength to a world that's centralizing faster.
Yeah.
So what would I expect those people to do? Sell their Bitcoin back to the fiat paper. And then the fiat paper's devalued again and again and again. And so they might look pure rich for a while in that. But what does that mean? Like when I say that, it means we are so early in this transition. What does that mean? This transition is going to be chaotic.
The future most people imagine is one of endless inflation. But Jeff Booth argues that the opposite is true if markets are allowed to function freely. The natural outcome of capitalism paired with advancing technology is deflation. Prices fall as productivity rises. We just don't see it clearly because everything is still measured in fiat terms. If you price goods and services directly in Bitcoin rather than converting them back into dollars, the picture changes. Broad declines that align with technological progress appear everywhere. Booth says the real issue isn't economics but psychology. People fear losing status, income, or relevance, and that fear drives them to lean on coercive systems. Governments and institutions respond by building stronger central controls. This creates a feedback loop. Fear breeds centralization, which then amplifies the fear. Meanwhile, the very technologies capable of decentralizing power, like AI or biotech, get twisted by those same frightened actors into tools for control or disruption. Society fractures further as trust erodes. The path we're on, Booth argues, is shaped by the incentives of inflationary, centrally managed currencies. Piling derivatives on top of those currencies only strengthens centralization and keeps inflation alive. But if society shifts to a long-term, predictable monetary base like Bitcoin, one that naturally supports deflation, those incentives flip. Coercion loses its hold, decentralization accelerates, and innovation compounds at a pace the current system can't allow. The choice between inflationary stagnation and deflationary progress is already here. If you found value in this breakdown, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with other investors who are paying attention. We're here to keep bringing you sharp analysis and voices that actually understand what's unfolding. Thanks for watching.
Most Bitcoiners still today are not understanding that the natural state of the free market is deflation and prices should fall. And if you're measuring in Bitcoin, prices are falling at the same rate as that technology is growing, right? So if you measure things from Bitcoin instead of convert Bitcoin to your piece of paper, then you'll see exactly, precisely what I'm saying. Your model of the world should match, if it's correct, should match exactly what's happening. So the model I laid out in the world, and as a Bitcoiner, is free markets deflation, technology is going to accelerate. It's not accelerating, it's moving exponentially. And we couldn't understand exponentials. And that meant all of these technologies, they're going to coincide at the same time at these rates we can't even understand. And it's going to seem crazy. But if you were in Bitcoin, then all prices are falling by that rate. If you're not in Bitcoin, all of that has to be consolidated at that rate. And it would look like coercion and control. Most people are giving the system of coercion and control more energy by leaning into it, by their fear in it. Because they're not pricing in Bitcoin, they're not spending in Bitcoin, they're using a derivative instrument of Bitcoin, thinking price is going up. That system is still inflationary. That system has to still be inflationary. And it's the opposite of what I'm saying. It's the opposite of the free market and prices go down, meaning we've never lived in a global free market. Nobody has a basis to understand that. And it takes lots of time to understand what's happening. At the same time, all of these technologies are moving exponentially, creating chaos in our brain from our previous models. But let's use some examples of if that model of reality was correct. And in my mind, it certainly is, because it's explaining everything, not one thing, everything. What would it feel like? And let's use some examples of why it would gain more fear in the minds of most of the population. Let's use some simple examples first. I'm going to lose my job. Prices are going up. Prices are going up. I'm going to lose my job to AI. What do? I turn to the government. I'm spending in the fiat dollar and save. What does the government do? I'll save you because I'll get votes, right? Or how do I save you? I print more money, destroy, and make it worse for you. That accelerates at the same pace as technology is moving the other way. It centralizes faster. What do laws look like in that system? They get changed and all your freedoms go away from that centralization because they have to, and you're voting for that. What does technology look like over you? It looks like a control system owned by 3 or 4 or 2 giant monopolies of AI companies that all of your information is going through and you're feeding it, making it stronger, where they could turn you off at any moment, not just money, but everything, or potentially worse, because you're feeding it in that system. Your mind is being warped to what that system wants you to believe. But you have no idea because you're inside that system through fear, making it stronger with how do I survive? That would happen. What would happen as it got worse and worse and worse? And I'm going down the fear track at first because that's majority of the population is living in that fear without realizing they're living in that fear. What they are saying is it's someone else. It's not me. Right? Somebody else is responsible for my happiness, and they're stuck in that fear. So as more and more coercion and control, and as the free market gives us tools to essentially create our own AIs, bioengineering, what will people do that want to burn it all down? With the same technology that could free all of us, they will use those technologies to create massive problems for the world because they're so stuck. And what will the system do in reaction? Try to stop it. How will it stop it? It will drive more printing of money, more coercion, more control. What will most people in the system do? Yes, stop them. What will those people do? Because they're so hurt from that, they will want to burn it all down. It'll divide society and it'll get worse and worse. And I know that's a really dystopian view.
Jeff Booth frames Bitcoin not as a trade, but as the foundation of a new societal layer. If it remains decentralized and secure, it unlocks something most people can barely imagine: a market where true deflation is allowed to play out. As technology drives down costs and multiplies productivity, prices fall naturally, and value creation becomes the measure of success rather than manipulation of money. Booth says the role of individuals is critical. Running a node, transacting in Bitcoin, or simply choosing to spend and save in it helps reinforce the decentralized network. That participation builds a market system that rewards contribution and innovation while diluting centralized control. On the other hand, if Bitcoin is mostly treated as a speculative token to flip back into fiat, it only feeds the very system that extracts from the many and consolidates power in the hands of a few. This is why Booth argues Bitcoin is not just an asset, it's a framework for money itself. When paired with exponential technologies like AI, energy breakthroughs, or biotech, its impact scales even further. If people use it as money, abundance gets distributed more evenly across society. If they don't, the legacy fiat system survives longer, squeezing harder, and making the eventual transition far more painful. Let's get back to the interview.
Well, I just thought it made perfect sense. I've known you now for quite a while, but I've always known you to be super curious about where the world's going and actually not afraid to change your mind on something if new information makes sense. And that's a massive strength. It's actually, I think it's why your podcast is so successful, because that's what you've done and people have followed your journey the entire time. And so now take what you know, and you've chased Bitcoin to the ground, every hole, every spot. You're not saying you're giving up on Bitcoin. You're just saying this is a base layer for society. I've chased it to the ground. It is Bitcoin. It reinforces that the free market is deflation, and we've never lived in one. If Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, it is inevitable that we are living in one. Let's explore the other technologies that are allowing that to accelerate. And so exploring some of those other technologies, and when we say technologies, when I hear you describe that, they're not other things. They're us inventing new things to be able to solve problems. It's our ideas that are the basis of technology. And that's what, now we have a base layer that allows all of that abundance to flow to all of us, where the free market is massively competitive. Everyone has to compete to provide value to you. And if you're holding Bitcoin, if you're part of the Bitcoin ecosystem, all of that abundance is flowing to you. So you're looking at all of that. If you're part of the fiat system, all of that abundance is being extracted from you and centralized against you. And so you already understand Bitcoin and you understand it to the sand. So I'm sure you're going to weave it in from time to time because it's important that people understand that phenomenon. That's what's happening. But the problem that you're worried about is from the debasement of money, from the control of money, every single problem.
Yeah.
But where the opposite system would provide opposite results. So what does that mean? Well, I would say, and even in Bitcoin, when I say 90% of Bitcoiners are measuring it from a fiat instrument, what does that mean? They're giving more strength to a world that's centralizing faster.
Yeah.
So what would I expect those people to do? Sell their Bitcoin back to the fiat paper. And then the fiat paper's devalued again and again and again. And so they might look pure rich for a while in that. But what does that mean? Like when I say that, it means we are so early in this transition. What does that mean? This transition is going to be chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
And where you're putting your energy in the transition, it will be less chaotic for you because they're all the demographics is tied to it.
Oh, yeah.
The capital and labor searches for where capital and labor is treated fairly. And so what you have is nations around the world, and this is happening in Bitcoin too, right? You have this base layer that if it stays decentralized and secure, which you are a part of making sure. If you run a node, you contribute your time to a system that is for you, right? If you're spending in that currency, you're contributing to a global free market that is for you. And I could say the same thing's the opposite. If you're not, you're contributing to a world that's extracting from you at a rate. And I'm not making any judgment of what people should do or shouldn't do, but they can ask themselves, do I have agency in the world that I'm creating or do I not? And we see this in Bitcoin because we're so far into it and we're seeing all of these things emerge. But when people move more of their time to Bitcoin, their lives get better. They see that they want to have children. It would be just a mere reflection of their belief set playing back, which would be true in the natural state of the free market. Everything would be just playing out, and the more people there. But if very few people understand what we're talking about right now, they're still stuck in this other system, then it's going to be chaotic.
Progress has always carried a paradox. The same tools that could broaden opportunity often end up reinforcing control when filtered through fragile institutions. Booth's argument cuts right to that tension. Technology is inherently deflationary. It makes things cheaper, faster, and more accessible. But when it collides with a fiat system designed to preserve scarcity through inflation, the result is distorted. Instead of broadening prosperity, innovation becomes a weapon for control or speculation. Bitcoin, in his view, is the pressure valve that could change that trajectory. Not as a quick trade, but as a neutral base layer where productivity gains flow to everyone rather than being siphoned off by policy choices or financial engineering. The stakes go well beyond prices or yields. They touch trust, power, and how societies choose to organize themselves in an age of accelerating change. The open question is whether enough people will adopt Bitcoin as money, not just as an investment, to tilt the balance toward decentralized abundance rather than leaving innovation shackled to the logic of inflationary systems. So stay tuned. If you're into real, data-backed takes on the financial system, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the weekly updates. Thank you for the support, and I hope you enjoy the video.